I don't have to make my decisions based on that fear. It's actually safe out here. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to love being me in an increasing way. It's the relationship with self, which is the most important thing we have. It's heartbreaking to me to think of people going through lives not loving themselves. I mean, that's who we go through life with.
My name is Jordan, and for the last 9 years, I've been living for what many might have looked like a dream. I was a real estate broker in one of the fastest growing cities of America, but for some reason could just never quite find happiness. After being diagnosed with a rare, incurable eye disease that oftentimes leads to blindness, I decided now more than ever is a time for me to follow my true dreams, which is to see the world. So I packed up my bags, packed up my home, and bought a one-way ticket across the world. During my solo travels, I rediscovered a new meaning for life and found that there was hope for me to heal my own body. I'm so excited that you're joining me on this journey as I rediscover me and find that this diagnosis was the best thing that ever happened to me.
I moved to Sayulita and was connected with Lee, and Lee ended up being my neighbor briefly, but we really connected before even being neighbors through, I guess, just conversation of Lee trying to help me find a place to live. And then Lee and I just connected. So this is Lee. And I guess if you want to go into like where, I guess your mini story of like your transition from the States to where you are now and all of that, because our stories kind of aligned to some degree. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think you and I connected really fluidly because I was thinking about this today. I was like, the way we're communicating was very different. And I think that you and I both have this, like, I could really sense from that you were like really committed to making things happen. Like I was like, oh, okay, she's like really full of possibility. Like we were like, great, well, we can do it like this, or we could do it like this. And this is all about getting you a place. But I could tell that you were just like really open to life and like really receptive. And I felt like we were really aligned on that. We were like, oh, I know you. I see you. Great. I'm a transformational life coach and a retreat leader. And I work with corporate conventional women, usually American or Canadian or European, but something Western and conventional, which I used to be, a lot of high achieving women as well, to liberate themselves, right? To liberate from the trappings of their mind, to liberate from their conditioning, societal pressures, other people's rules, to come alive, right? To connect with themselves, connect with their bodies, learn how to quiet their minds and really live from their hearts and get more in touch with their joy and their freedom and their purpose to like be free and to express and to create a life they love. So, I do that in coaching and on retreat. And that is my progression too. I was a New York City high achieving, big time perfectionist, marathoner, triathlete, 4.0 everything. Pretty typical kind of driven American woman for many years in New York City and then several years in Santa Monica, California as well. And worked in marketing and served neurosurgeons and worked in hospitals and then worked at SoulCycle. And I was really kind of doing this life here, which on paper was excellent and definitely checking off boxes. And progressively through the years, and as I was really kind of in my own development, personal development journey and spiritual journey, just more and more felt really not aligned with what I was actually using my time and energy to do on a daily basis. So have gone through my own freedom journey and taking lots of bold leaps to either move across a country or quit a career or reinvent or really rebirth or get in touch with myself and really feel into like, how do I actually want to like experience this life and serve the world and use my life? That's been a really kind of long and fun journey and a lightning journey and a journey full of, I'd say, increased peace and connection with myself and connection to spirit. So, and lots more slowness and softening as well. So it's finally landed me in Sayulita. So I have this beautifully curated design life in a small Mexican beach town that we live in. Spend a lot of time in nature and just really being on purpose and really being intentional and really trying to like lead from love in the world. So that's a little snippet.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think something that came up for me when you were talking, and I think we talked about this briefly before, is that our stories are kind of similar because we both had like professional careers and we're both doing all of the things that we thought we were supposed to be doing. And then obviously we got led down different or a path that obviously we crossed paths. But I think what we have talked about before that's interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that my journey, I feel like, was always kind of leading up to this, but it something like happened that made everything change. I feel like it sounds like your journey, it was like something sparked in you and it just kind of progressively like continued to grow and continued to grow. And then eventually you like made some decisions to have the life that you want and that makes sense for you. And I think that that's really, I think, beautiful. And I think it's a very interesting thing because sometimes people will say to me, well, you know, you have an excuse to live your life the way that you're living because, you know, you had this thing that happened to you. And I think actually people that make a conscious decision to say, hey, nothing crazy even happened necessarily. And I just know the type of life that I want to live, and to be bold to actually like move towards the light to do that, I actually think is like so much more, like, not to compare, but I think it takes a lot of courage to even just do that. To just decide that, like, hey, I know what I want and nothing crazy has to happen. I know what I want. So I think that that's really amazing that how our stories are different in that way. But I think it's just like, it really goes to show that it doesn't really matter what happens in your life. Like, if you know that something's calling to you, that you can get there. It doesn't really, like, nothing crazy has to happen. And like, it's just, you just have that calling, I guess.
I like how you're saying how it doesn't matter what brings you to the awareness, right? Because I think that's what you're pointing at is like, right, there's a moment for me, or progressive moments, and maybe even just more of an acute moment for you, but like this kind of kick. I think we've discussed this, but this like kind of emergence kick, this kick that, this calling, as you've called it, but I kind of like to think of it as a kick as though you're pregnant, like something kicking in your belly to say like, hey, something either wants to come out of me, or something wants to be birthed from me, or something wants to change for me, or something wants to emerge from my soul that's different than what is happening now, or that's more expansive, right? Like something, it kicks at us. And I think that oftentimes people have kicks. Like I think like the first thing that really has to happen when you have a kick is you need to be in practice or have some sort of mechanism to slow down. Oftentimes I feel people don't get that intuitive kick or that hit, right? Because they're just so busy. And I don't say busy just like in their doing, yeah, that too, but like busy in their minds, right? I love this kind of invite of like, we have to like slow our minds or quiet our minds enough so that we can move beyond them. And so I think for me, like when I started doing my own personal development work, or really getting into my spiritual practices about 12 years ago, and then really like being in like deeply a deep like yoga practitioner and everything too, I learned how to like slow down the mind and quiet it enough that I could actually feel the kick and hear what my, heart or my gut or my intuition or spirit or higher call, whatever you want to call it, was asking for me. Which was, there's that first step. It's just like, right, like slowing down, quieting down enough to like hear it, right? That's the awareness. And then that bravery, like what you're saying, or courage. I love how you're using that word, which courage really is like the sharing of the heart, right? Like core is heart. It's like, really giving your heart or showing your heart or living your life like, led by your heart, and letting that be known, is really an honoring. Like I like to go, it's bravery, yes, and it's courage, but it's a self-honoring. Like once you feel that from within, we have a choice, right? We're always deciding something. We're always deciding how many like decisions do we have a day, but right, we get those moments where we're like, I have an undeniable call. Am I going to honor it? Like, am I going to love myself and honor this thing? Or am I going to create all sorts of reasons, excuses, justifications, practicalities around why I can't. Right. And so the former to me is really driven by love and trust and faith and having a vision and like following it. And the other one is kind of, really kind of using deductive reasoning about like all the reasons why you can't. And you have to essentially choose fear to not do that. And I think that I mean, what I observe a lot when I come back here is that a lot of people are really either unaware entirely because they're just living according to someone else's rules and flow and in some box that everyone, of rules that they never even thought about. Or if they are starting to become aware of that, right? Like they're kind of teetering on, yeah, but, okay, that sounds nice and all, but like, how could I do that? Or I couldn't do that. Or you have it easier than me. Or, how do I get there? Like, I'm too scared to get there. So often that's what I come in to do, is help people disempower the fear, because once you can be with that, and see that it is possible for you to like turn the limits in your mind to possibilities, then you can, it takes a lot of bravery, like you said, like a lot of boldness, a lot of audacity. It takes a real audacity to say like, no, I'm going to live the life that my soul wants. Like my soul had a dream and my life is it. And I'm going to just embody the dream that, wants to come through me. And yeah, my dream and my mission is that more and more people do that, and to see what happens when, individually, one by one, we come alive, and then we can like really serve from our hearts. And I think you've seen too, the ripple of that is huge. Like even us right now connecting, is a product of that ripple. And so that exponentially grows and grows, and then we can like influence our little corner of the world, all of us, because we've to some degree come alive more than those that we can serve.
I think that is definitely something that I've noticed, is that people are so distracted or so in this programming that they think that like you said, like there's all these reasons why people think they can't live the life that is calling to them. I often like to ask people, like, if you could do anything, like, what would it be that you would do? And then they, say something, they're like looking like, oh, this is ridiculous, like that I'm saying this. I'm like, but why is it ridiculous? Like, it's not. So yeah, I definitely agree that it's like people get so wrapped up in the programming, or they're not even, they're so distracted that they can't even hear their inner knowing. So that's definitely something that I think is really beautiful with the work that I think that I understand that you do, is just like helping people kind of tap into that. Because I think once you're able to tap into that, like you said, it's a ripple effect. I think that's what's beautiful about like life coaches, any type of coach, is that they're not like, a lot of people will spend money on a therapist and say, oh, well, this, and this, like they're going to help me get through this. But a therapist is, in my opinion, set up so that you're their forever client. And I feel like with coaches, like we kind of like spark something in people to help guide them on the way, and not say, you need me for the rest of ever. It's really kind of just, here are some tools to really get back to yourself. So I think that that's really amazing that you, being somebody that's come from that type of lifestyle, you understand these women or these people that you're serving to a whole other degree. Like you get it. And you're able to kind of tap in and spread that ripple effect amongst them, which will eventually affect their sphere of influence too. So it's really just like a super beautiful thing. And I know that you do that on like a one-on-one type situation. And then you also host retreats. How is like the retreats, do you feel like different than doing like maybe a 3-month coaching program?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, so I host the Wilding Experience, which is in San Pancho in Mexico. And yeah, so they're like a a 7-day accelerated, real experiential dose, and a real embodiment practice, rather than talking, for coaching. So they're really like an embodiment, right? This is kind of going to be connecting a lot of the talking and stuff that we do in coaching. And there's a lot of doing in coaching as well, and homework, and this kind of, getting on the field of your life and playing your game, so to speak. However, the Wilding Experience is really like just that. It's an experience, right? You're getting out. The first thing that's massive about that in any retreat really is you're leaving your own comfort zone behind. And where I choose to do my retreats is in a very wild place on purpose, because much of what I'm encouraging people to do, like you said, like I'm encouraging people to really reignite something inside them, or activate parts of themselves that were dormant, whether it's, their love or their creativity or their joy or their lust for their life, like to get them excited about their lives again, and really to like get them out of their fear and help them connect. And help them get fully expressed and move past that fear. So what's really important about that is to get people out of their comfort bubble and their circumstances to do that. So when you come stay in a place that like has no walls and maybe there are critters nearby and but you can hear the ocean and you can like really like taste the kind of like salty air, and you can put your feet in the earth every day, and you can walk slowly because you have to, because there's dirt paths, and you have to be conscious and you have to be still, right? The mind starts to still, and like the natural rhythms really restore when you're in a place like that. So while we, do things that you can, sure, you can go do these things where you are in the States, and you can work with me online too, and that's absolutely excellent. What makes the wilding experience such a like potent experience that really creates transformation in such a short amount of time is you're already in an environment that's so supported. Like nature is really supporting you in that. And there's real magic in being in the jungle and being on the ocean and having those natural rhythms come in so that your minds can actually go on vacation and not be in that hypervigilant state of survival that happens when you're triangulating through your life in America, because you have to here. Like you really have to here. I mean, most people here, when I look around, are like, kind of surviving, like in kind of drone mode, like roboting, as I say. And so when you come on the wilding experience, the first thing you do is you unrobot. Then you're connected with sisters who are there for the same reason. So automatically people are there kind of hungry and curious. And so that kind of makes everyone connected in that. And we'll even start an opening ceremony immediately, like really building trust and really opening our hearts. And so once we get that sisterly connection, any of the movement that we do, there's a lot of movement, any of the play that we do, any of the expression or creativity that we do, any of the fear, kind of activating activities that we do, which are very much intentional. Everyone is supporting each other. And I call it the sisterhood effect. Is like, whether you're crying and cheering in a sister circle, whether you're sweating your life away in a Temescal ceremony, whether you're taking a massive plunge into a big wave, whether you are like literally teetering on the edge on a hike, and like on a kind of a cliff looking into the ocean, or whether you're just like resting, and even that, the challenge in just resting and doing nothing. Any of that, right? Like you're held and you're seen and you're supported. And a massive facet of everything that we're talking about, and I know everything that you're about to, Jordan, is how much we can love and accept ourselves through anything. And so to me, what's massive on retreat is that you've got a set of mirrors around you who you show up and you're messy and you're scared and you're crying or you're shouting or you're wild, you're really wilding. Like I get women kind of running around naked and just like going wild by the end of it or by the middle of it. You're seen and you're celebrated. And so when we get that reflection back where we're like, oh, what the rewiring that's happening is, oh, you mean I can come be myself, all parts, not hiding, and be loved and be accepted. And sometimes what I find is like, it's like not just be loved and accepted, but be loved and accepted. Like, at first it's like, am I going to be loved and accepted? And it's like, oh wait, I am being loved and accepted. In fact, I'm being loved and accepted and invited even more. So, so then we have this association between like being vulnerable, which is being seen, right? That's what courage is, right? You go like, here's my heart, same thing. Like courage and vulnerability to me are like the same thing. I think there's nothing more courageous than vulnerability. So once you're seen and then you're loved and accepted and invited even more, we have an association of, okay, when I'm vulnerable or when I'm courageous, I'm loved. And the safety that creates typically, right, empowers us to create, right? Now we're like, oh, I don't have to live in that fear. I don't have to make my decisions based on that fear. It's actually safe out here. I'm going to be me. And I'm going to love being me in an increasing way. And so, yeah, the foundation of all of this, I think, our journeys and what I do is self-love, is the relationship with self, which is the most important thing we have. I mean, there's nothing to me, when I really think of like the thing that could break my heart, if I really sit and think about something, it doesn't have to be, some big nonprofit or some big cause around the world or something like that. It's just when I think, it's heartbreaking to me to think of people going through lives not loving themselves. I mean, that's who we go through life with. And so to me, to go through life in a relationship where you're just not willing to be generous, to be stingy, like people who are stingy with themselves, or people who only view themselves through a critical lens, or only hear the voice of their inner critic. To me, that's a great tragedy and a great waste. And so it's really important to me that we mirror each other in community and in experiences like the wilding or any other retreat or any like partnership like this, where we get to really teach each other how to love ourselves properly.
Something that's coming up for me, I feel, when you were speaking, is that with coaching, I think coaching is absolutely like amazing. I think everyone should at some point in time have some sort of coach. I think you can have lots of different types of coaches throughout life, but I feel like with coaching, it's I would almost compare it to watching like a badass documentary where you learn so much, like so much. And I feel like with retreat, it's like you're actually like, instead of going watching a documentary about how to garden and grow your own fruit, like you're actually like at the garden growing your own fruit. So I feel like coaching is amazing. I feel like it's a great it's either a great first step or it's a great step after the retreat. It's really both. Like it can fit in both ways, but I think that coaching's amazing. Coaching has changed my life. And, but I also think with retreat, like you said, you're actually like in it, like physically in it. And it's not something that you read in a book. It's not something that your therapist told you. Like you're actually there. And that's something you can't undo. Like you can't unlearn something that you experienced. So I think that's why retreats are very powerful. And then also with the community aspect of it too, I think that a lot of people that I've noticed, they will, even just like with my personal journey, they're reaching out, like asking questions like about all this stuff, but it's more of like a one-on-one like thing. Something is sparked in them that they're like, oh, I see some kind of light. I'm not sure what it is, but I see it. And it's hard to keep that light shining when you're the only person in your community that is experiencing it. And I feel like when you go on a retreat, you're immediately just embodied around all of these other people. They're strangers, you don't know them, but they're all people that somehow got there too. And they all have that they saw the light somewhere too. So I think that retreats are amazing just because you're experiencing everything that you're learning, but also you're now building a sense of community that when you do go back to whatever life it is that you had before, you have other people to hold you accountable or other people to lean on when, maybe you feel like you're going back down the old paths that you used to be in. So I think that retreats are a really great way to build community with like-minded people, because it's very difficult, I feel like, to be, say, in a big city and you just have this light in you and you're like, I don't really know what to do with this light. Where do I go with it? And then you're trying to find your way through the dark. But if you're in a community of people, they may be strangers, but you're in a community with people, they all see the light. So you know that you're not crazy because they saw it too. So
Yes.
I think retreats are really powerful. I think coaching and retreats are just absolutely amazing. I think, like, to tie in what you said about self-love, I think that it is absolutely heartbreaking that I think our self-love and our self is the absolute last thing that people think about and worry about in our society. Everybody thinks about like their significant other, their families, their physical bodies, their everything, and like their relationship with themselves is, I feel like, is the very last thing, which is why it's interesting, because people, you could get them to pay $200 a month to go to a very expensive hit studio, but they're not going to pay $200 a month to go to a life coach. It's just, it's people are like, it's not that they won't, but it's harder to convince that of somebody, because our programming has told us so much that, like, oh, self-love, like, that's like, who really has that? Everybody has insecurities. Everybody doesn't really like themselves. And it's actually not true. There's a lot of people out here that have done a lot of work. And I think the more that people come together and the more that people share the message that it is possible to love yourself, it is possible to love your life. There aren't just a select few people that are like, oh, wow, she's very lucky that she's confident, or she's very lucky that she lives that lifestyle. Like, no, everyone can have self-love. Everybody can live this dream life. It's just most people, it's our programming that makes us believe that we need to put, that's like the last thing that matters, and it needs to be the first thing that matters. So I definitely agree with everything that you just said.
That's right. And it's an honoring practice. That's why I like to think of it as honoring, is like, and we can use the people around us that we would honor typically, right? We really, if we can externalize ourselves, if we can really make partnership with ourselves, right? Then yeah, we can eventually even get to a point where we can be that partnership or that community, right? Even or that support system to ourselves that you're saying is so beautiful to find on retreat or even in a coaching partnership, right? Eventually, because we really are our own healer. We really are, right? Like we could be our own biggest cheerleader. And it's like, why not? Why not do the work with that, right? I think when people start to see the value in that, we really ask ourselves, like, what's the value of loving yourself in your life? Like, what would that actually give you? Like, and then you, right, you think about like, great, or what's the value of having your inner ally speak louder than your inner critic? Like if people really sit with that and they actually think about just the typical day, forget the big stuff, just the typical day after day after day of the ally actually being the one to speak in the head, to speak outside the body, and to make decisions, right? Like what would that be worth in our lives? What could be possible? And so when you really think about like what's underneath us or what's at stake as far as the amount of work we do or how we do our work, because what you're saying is, yes, it is easier to go to the gym and just think of ourselves as our bodies and do the exercise and do all the kind of, or it is easier to just like, pump our face full of things or, do things to our bodies or change our physical form or like adjust our circumstances around them so that we have less problems. I think, what's the value of those? I mean, it doesn't last. I call that like, those are things that all bring like fleeting happiness, or it's all externally kind of focused. It's also ego based, right? It's outward, it's exercise. We think about that as like X is like outside, right? I like to think of coaching and things like this, or even, like being on a self-love journey, which can come through coaching in the mirroring that we do, or can come on retreat in the community and the sisterhood you get and the bonding, is inner size. Right? If we just kind of like flip that and we say, great, what's the value then of doing inner size versus doing exercise? What's the value of having all your focus, energy, and attention on your inner world, which is creating your outer world, right? And first you have to be aware, but once you're aware of that, and you know that everything you're attracting around you is a reflection of what's going on inside here, which is really here, that you're responsible for attracting everything, whether you like it or not, then people feel incentivized when they start to make that association to do the real work, which has nothing to do with your body. I mean, we use the body as a vehicle and a tool, right? Like I was in a very deep yoga class this morning, and yeah, we use the body, right? Why? Because the body's breathing. Why does breath matter? Because it's only happening now, right? The body and the breath is just a tool for presence. And that matters because, like what I said before, if we can be present, we don't have to task our mind with doing anything backward or anything forward. We're just here. And so when we're here, there's less, and then there's room and there's space to actually give this thing a break and come from here. And that's where all the juice is. That's where the magic is, right? Like all the things who we really are, like this skin suit is carrying this magical fucking thing, this magical entity that's like, get me out, let me live, like, right? Like send me like everywhere, right? Like it's dying to emerge. And all the creativity in us, especially being feminine essence beings, which we are, is like there is so much flow and creativity and deliciousness in us. So yeah, it's our job.
I think something that before used to be very overwhelming for me is like all of this, all these different things that we need to do. Like, oh, we need to go to the gym. We need to have like, at least where I'm from, being from a place where everyone has plastic surgery and everybody has fake eyelashes and fake nails and fake lips and fake hair extensions and all this stuff. I'm like thinking, oh my God, I have to do all this stuff so that I look pretty, so that I feel pretty. And then people will like me and then I will feel loved. And it's just like this whole cycle. And I remember one time I calculated, I was like, it would cost me like $1,500 a month to do everything that I need to do to myself to feel good so that men like me so that I fit in with these circles. So like all these things. And I remember being like, oh my God, this doesn't even make any sense. Like this can't be real. Like how is this real life? And then it was crazy because then, you know, I decided a lot of things happened between here and there, but you know, going down a journey of self-love, it's like now I'm in a place like I don't even think about what I put on my body, really. I don't think about like anything. I feel so much self-love and it's all free. I mean, granted, like I went to, you know, I've like read books. I've had a couple of handful of like coaches or retreats or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think the most beautiful thing that I kept hearing from people on retreats, like my leaders or my coaches, they all kept saying something along the lines of like, you are the only person that can heal you. And that was so freeing because instead of coming from a world of like consumerism where you think that I have to buy all of these things in order to find peace, I have to buy all these things in order to find self-love so I feel good about myself, it was actually like everything that we need is like we are our own healers, whether it be from like a physical standpoint, like something you're having some sort of issue with your body, or if it's like an emotional thing, like you don't need to go to therapy for 5 years and be on all this medication and do all these weird kind of like therapies like in order to fix yourself. Like we are our own healers. So I think that taking a step in the right direction of like, you know, investing in yourself, and maybe like you do go to a retreat or you do get a coach for 3 months or something. I think all, to me, in my mind, the way I look at that is you're basically investing in yourself to find like a guide of some sort that has been down the journey before, and they're really there to kind of show you the ropes to spark this fire a little bit more. But a true great retreat or a true great coach, like you're not going to need them for the rest of ever. They're there just kind of as a guide to show you the light. And that's what's really beautiful, is that we don't need anything long term. We just kind of need to, you know, start down the path. So that's why I really resonate with the work that you do. And I think that all of this stuff, I just, like you said, I mean, you know how passionate I am about just all of the different things. And I think that the world would be so much of a better place as a whole if every single one of us had that self-love and we all did that work. We invested in ourselves as opposed to invested into all of these things that society says that we need to invest in. So I definitely dig it.
Kind of like living beyond life of the physical level, or kind of living beyond like those quick fix things that feel good for a moment, or kind of being so associated with the body and doing all the stuff on the outside just to feel good for a bit. And like the invite to me, or what I heard in all that big share was, you know, going deeper, like being brave enough to go deeper and really like be an exploration of like why we're here, right? And like why we have this life. And it's not the easy path, is what I was saying, right? It's not the common path, it's not the easy path, and it's not the better path either, to be frank. I think that the world would be so much more delicious if people were so full of love and on fire and on purpose, sure. But I think everything's happening the way it's supposed to. So I think more and more people are doing the deep work. But the whole invite behind that is to really have a fulfilling experience of life. And so often people come to me. I coach a lot of women, what I call is we take their lives from good to great, because it's most people that I'm working with have really good lives. The physical things, the on paper things are all there. The thing is, what they always bring is it feels empty. It feels disconnected. Like, you know, I always think of it, I'm like always like, okay, like if you know, if my soul had a voice, it would be saying something like, surely this can't be it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like surely I wasn't put here to just like punch the clock and get in my nice car and go get my nails done and watch Netflix. Like surely that is not, and like, you know, have a little fun on the weekend and then do it all again and dread my life on a weekly basis. Like surely that's not the thing. And I think that, and this is really what coaching does as opposed to therapy, which you've been making distinction about that as well. You know, coaching isn't concerned with going backward in time to understand why everything is the way it is. We do that a bit to have a basic level of awareness and understanding. And most of my clients actually come to me having been with a therapist for a long time. And oftentimes clients will be like, I've been in therapy for 14 years and this has helped so much more. Because we take that and we really have an orientation to then creating forward as a product of the present moment awareness, right? But really creating a vision, like creating a vision for what we really want, like daring to actually tell the universe and tell others what we really want specifically, right? And then grounded in faith and trust in the process of that, but right, being in brave, bold, kind of like soul aligned action to create that thing. And not necessarily being attached. There's a lot of surrender in that as well. There's a lot of surrender in that, right? It's not about control, like responsibility for yourself and control for the circumstances are, it's a big distinction, right? But having kind of that letting go enough, that non-grasping enough, that non-striving enough, right? To not be attached to how it comes in, and to really go for it, like, and to really dare to go for it and to play big about it. And so I think that that's really, you know, when people are coming to me, whether it's they want, you know, a soul aligned mission in the world, they want to create a business of their dreams, or they always thought they were good at X and they want to bring that into the world. Or many women these days, I think because I'm in a really expansive, delicious relationship, want a juicy relationship and want to create a family and a legacy like that, right? The legacy can live on through you in various ways. You can birth various things. It could be a family, it could be a business, whatever it is. Or people want to live where they love, like we have been brave enough to create for ourselves. So no matter what people want to get, it's really having like a big enough vision and a big enough mission about that, right? And that, again, that requires the deep work. That's the invite always that I give people, right? Is to really like dare to kind of like to be brave enough to do that. Because the truth is too, even if you've decided so far by fear on what your life is because you've done what everyone does or what you're supposed to do or society told you to do, your parents told you to do, whatever the rules that you didn't make up for yourself yet, because there's no skill there yet, right? Right. If you didn't yet get to the point where you actually get the big flex, which is like you make your whole own rules, like someone else made up the rules that you're living within anyway, so might as well make your own up, right? There's no actual rule book. Is if you're practical and conservative and making your decisions based on fear, you also might fail. You also might fail at what you don't even want, right? The job that you don't even like could go away. The relationship that you don't even like that you're in, but you're in because you think you have to or you can't leave, right? That might also fail. They might leave. The thing that you don't even want is still not the security or practicality or conservativeness. There's still risk in that. So you might as well take a chance and actually like take an intentional risk at doing what you actually want and what you actually love, because nothing is actually promised or secure at all anyway. So to me, that's the big invite. It's like you go for the big game then, because it may not work anyway. So if I'm going to fail risking something, I want it to be going for the thing I actually want.
Oh, I think that I definitely agree. I think that we do have all of these rules and these concepts and ideas of like what our life should look like. And obviously everyone, for the most part, I think knows that in a general sense that like nobody's life looks the same, but I feel like not a lot of people actually know that our lives can look very different. And I think that that's what's really beautiful. I mean, everything that we've talked about all ties into each other, because it's like if you do start doing the work, you do start hearing your inner knowing, you do start investing in yourself, finding people that can guide you along the way, then you do start being able to hear this inner calling of what is it that like your life needs, or what is it that is going to be fulfillment for you, what's going to be your legacy. Because I know me personally, I was doing things that, like you said, I hated my career. I really didn't like anything about what my life looked like, but I was so scared of letting it go. But it was like, for what? I didn't even like it anyways. And as soon as I was able to let it go, things started falling into place for me. And I started to actually pick up and realize what my sole purpose was. And that's when life begins to get so fulfilling, whether it is, like you said, starting a business, starting a nonprofit, helping others, building a family, building all of that, it's like we don't ever really tap into what our soul is really desiring unless we can hear our soul, but most of us can't ever even hear it. So I think that life just gets so much more exciting when you do the work so that you can hear that inner calling, and then you can chase after that inner calling, whatever that inner calling is, because it's going to be different for everyone. And then life just looks so much more beautiful. And like you said, you're not waking up every day being like, surely I wasn't just put on this earth to like do the same thing every day. Like there's just no way. Like, because I was having those ideas at a very young age. I was having those ideas, and I just honestly was not even tapped in enough with myself to actually realize, like, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't think that I thought it was just a dream. Like I was like, people don't do that. And then I, things happened, and I went and did some of those things. And now it's just like, I wish I could, like, I think I told you about that TikTok account I saw that's like, they go up to random people and ask, like, are you really, or are you happy? And like, it's just, they get a very candid answer from people. I wish there'd be like an account where you could just go up to somebody like, what would you do if you could do anything right now? Because people ask that to little kids. They say, what would you be when you grow up? And we ask that, but we don't ever ask, like, a 40-year-old person, like, hey, what is it that you want to do with your life? Because we assume at 40 you should know what you're doing, and it's just like, it's not like that. Your life changes and you change all the time, and we don't have to have things figured out like at any certain point in your time. I mean, things can pivot and change all the time. I think as long as we're like chasing after whatever our soul is like on fire about, life has some sort of a purpose, and it's enjoyable no matter how dark the days get or how bright the days are. If you're chasing some sort of purpose, like, it's worth it. So
I agree. And one thing I just wanted to say too is, like, I actually never think, I love to use this phrase that I love so much, and so I just want to like call it out because I think it's fun. I don't think we're ever meant to figure out anything about our lives. Like, lives to me are meant to be lived, not figured out about. And so, right, if we're figuring out, we are way too mental to be actually experiencing the life that's right here, which, by the way, is always more juicy delicious than it seems if we're actually in the damn thing. Like you said before about, like, being on the outside of it, or just like jumping in and, like, I'll say, throw your hat over the fence, or like, watching your life from the stands versus getting up from the bleachers and walking down the aisle and putting a uniform on and just getting in the game. And one of them to me is very mental and thinking about and fixing to and figuring out, and I'm not just sure, and mental mathing how life should be going. And one of them is just being in life the way it is, with great acceptance and presence and gratitude, while also intentionally being in action to like create forward. And so I love when people are like, I'm just figuring out what I want to. I'm like, let's get in there. Let's just get in and play the damn thing, right? Because I think, like, that was so beautiful that you said that, because so many people are stuck figuring out. And can you imagine, right? Like, again, this is one of those things that could really make me sad, is thinking about the amount of beautiful, magical, creative, powerful human beings who go through their life figuring it out, which there's no arrival. What do you think? One day you're just like, we figured it out. Like, that's not the goal. Is not, there is no one gets the answer. So let's just not play that game. So I love to help people out of a figuring it out situation, and just into a living it situation.
My grandparents, they're very like spiritual. They've read like all the same books that I mean, they're very like, I was very blessed to have that example. But my 91-year-old grandfather, to this day, he still, every time I see him, like, makes a comment similar to the fact of like, we know nothing at all. I know nothing at all. Or he says something along the lines of, I'm learning every day. And to hear a 91-year-old man say, I'm learning, like, I'm just learning, it's beautiful, because we just think that, like, you get to somewhere in life and you just, and I just think that's such an amazing example, because we never have anything figured out, and we are constantly learning and we're constantly evolving. And I think that I personally think that's what keeps you young and keeps your spirit young, is just having this idea that there's age doesn't really exist. You're not really in a certain time frame at all. You're just, your soul is just a being, and it's just here experiencing this human experience. I love everything that you're doing. I think that so many women and men can benefit from everything that you're doing, whether it be coaching, whether it be your retreats, which you're having a retreat coming up the end of this year, right?
Yes, November 12th through the 18th in San Pancho, right north of Sayulita, Mexico. Yes.
How, obviously you have your retreat that's going on, and then I'm assuming you are open to new coaching clients. Like, how can people get in touch with you or follow your journey or your work?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm currently, the doors are open for the Wilding Experience, November 12th through the 18th. I am taking, discovery calls, interest calls for that, to check for fit and make sure people are ready to go on a wild adventure with me and be liberated. So there's that. And then, I do one-on-one coaching journeys. Doors are open for that as well. I've got space for one-on-one clients. So that usually looks like a 4-month partnership with me. I also do small group coaching as well. And the best way that that's been experienced, or the most impactful way that I've experienced, is when a set of friends or a group of friends want to do the work together as well, which is a really beautiful and dynamic and supportive container as well. And I also have a membership, the Wilding membership as well, for someone who wants accountability and community as well. So there's that too. So many ways to work with me, depending on interest. And then at Instagram, all my offerings are there. So at Elldash, or my website, which is leemarie-dashti.com.
I'll link all of your stuff below, or like in the description, all of that too. But I'm super excited. I fully love everything that you're doing. I believe in everything that you're doing, because in some form or fashion, like, a lot of it's stuff that I've experienced and it's changed my life too. So I'm just so excited to see somebody else that's like really serving others. I think that's like a really big thing, is that you go through a lot of this work and it's about you focusing on yourself, and then eventually you get to a place where you can serve others. And I think that you do that so well, whether it be through coaching or whether it be through your retreats. So I'm super excited to connect. I really encourage everyone to check out Lee's retreats, and then also her coaching programs too. So thank you so much for your time and your energy and your space. And this was really amazing.
Thank you, Jordan. I just want to say too, thanks for your bravery and courage to live according to your heart and purpose, because you are amplifying the mission of so many beautiful people. And I know you're so devoted to your service. So if you were not doing that, right, you couldn't be really amplifying the magic in others in that way. And your devotion to the world is absolutely inspiring and breathtaking. And it's just so full of love. So thank you for living your aligned life with your bravery and courage and your beauty.
Well, thank you. I can't wait for you to come back. Get back soon.
I'll see you in September.